where do you get your food? I'm going to say, I manifest it with my thoughts, and I don't give the credit to any man. That it comes from a divine source, and it was all here for me when I agreed to come here and have the life experience in the flesh. That's why the Master said, as the many sparrows, you don't reap or gather or sow. They have everything they need to eat. Why wouldn't you think it would be the same for you?
Yeah.
And so I walk confidently knowing there's going to be food for me there. And it's interesting that a lot of Christians want to take credit for feeding me, and a lot of people that are trying to prove to themselves they're worth loving themselves by doing a physical act. See, if I did that, now somebody will say, oh, you did a good thing, and I'll say, oh, I feel good, I can love myself. But the reality is we should love ourselves, and then we'll have a steady insight into that other person is really me, and I should just give if I have something to give that other person. If I see that they have need and I have an abundance of, well, why wouldn't I just give? And I tell you, it's the greatest experience that you can have as a human. It's what we all came to have, to help one another. Because the reality is we're so equal. And if you don't believe in equality, if you want to think you're greater because you're the queen or the president of the U.S. or because your job has more, veracity than the porta potty plumber is not really an important guy, but the farmer is. When we're all really important, it's. I don't know where I was even talking about.
So anyway, listen, look, this is Daniel. We're in London. Okay, Daniel, tell us about your homelessness and how you've become homeless.
Well, about the homelessness, it's the hardest job I ever had, and I was gainfully employed for like 2.5 decades, and so I thought I worked hard then. But now coming and having this kind of experience teaches me that the hardest work is being the least man. The guy who doesn't have anything at all, not even a place to lay his head and rest. How I became it was that very thing. I read in the Bible, the first time I read it, I was 38 years old, and I was looking for some answers, and I didn't know where else to look. And the Jesus character in that book said something that really stuck with me for a couple of years. He said to his messengers, go now and make yourself the least. And the messengers heard him, because they learned later and said, we're arrayed as a spectacle before you, Lord. We're beaten, shoddily dressed, homeless, signifying they'd given up all the worldly wealth and all the worldly ways to pursue the knowledge that the Christ had come to bring there to them. And so I thought there must be something really knowledgeable in being the least. There must be some really great spiritual wisdom in being the least, because nobody's going to make themselves the least. They're trying to make themselves the most to one another every day. And so it took me a couple of years to work up the nerve, the courage to go be with nothing, because I've always been housed and I've always had a job, and money was my enabler all my life. And I told my girlfriend of 10 years at that point, if I can make it homeless for just a year, I'll feel like a great success, were my exact words. And 6 weeks into it, I called her and said, send me money home. I don't know how to be homeless. And I really didn't. I didn't know where to bathe. I didn't know where to get a meal. I couldn't ask the homeless people. I was afraid that I would out myself, that they'd see I wasn't really homeless at all. I was just faking it. And so I went and got the money, $300 that Barb sent me, and not wanting to look like a failure, because I'd never failed at anything that I endeavored to do, at least I didn't think I had, I spent that money on the homeless people around me, and made some friends really quick by doing that, and found, I began to let them teach me what it was to be a human being. And so that's why I became homeless. It was a 1-year experimental excursion that's turned into 11 years in 12 countries on 4 continents. And in fact, when they told me I couldn't go into Canada, I went in the next year illegally on my mountain bike without asking them permission. Full experience.
Why not? Why not?
Because
I bet it was cold there, right?
No, it was June, July.
Not bad
there.
then,
Actually,
not bad
middle of
weather.
Summer. It was gloriously gorgeous. But I was 26 hours away from what would have been the first trip to Europe, and I was nabbed on the tram without fare. On my way back from the airport, I made a dry run to the airport the day before, because if you wake up under a bush at a park, you might not be on time. You know?
Absolutely.
And so I made it to the gate and found where I needed to be, and was back on the tram on the way back. And I'd ridden the tram for 6 weeks without any occurrence running into the law or anything. And I always stood up and watched out the door to see if they were coming, and they never were. And so I guess I felt relaxed enough to sit down this time. And as I was sitting, watching a spot on the floor, thinking about the whole excursion, I heard the the tram stopped, and the woman said in French on the radio something on the intercom, and I thought, wow, I didn't even know anybody was on the trams. I thought they were automated. I wonder if that's a sign I should get up and get off. Why am I sitting down anyway? I never sit on the tram. And then I realized, why am I looking at this spot on the floor? And I heard the doors shut, and I looked up, and there were the police asking me for their tickets. And so it's been pretty much like that, the whole experience. I've been thinking it real. I've been dreaming my way into new experiences here. I follow string theory. It's very accurate.
Wow. So where's your future from here, Daniel?
Wow, that's really untold. You know, I've tried to manifest and dream about what it might be, and I really lack the imagination to now.
Oh, wow.
I know, interestingly, I suspect that I've seen a lot of signs in the movie of my life that indicate I perhaps might write a book. I've had a lot of people ask me to even. And it's interesting because I share a very small amount of the experience of my life thus far, and they're interested enough that to ask me to write a book. And so perhaps I thought on the way over here, perhaps I'll write a book in Europe, because I know the States isn't the place that I'm going to do that. I'm actually not going to go back to the States. I'm done with that culture. It's a very violent, it's malicious is a very good word for it. And again, I'm not being what do you call it when it's like maybe I'm prone to not like it because I was born there kind of thing. It's not. It's an assessment that I've made after exploring a lot of other cultures. I didn't know that my culture was so perverted until I experienced other cultures. And when I went back, I suffered reverse culture.
Must be a bit of a shock coming to here and realizing the police don't carry weapons
Not only that,
or
it's
guns.
Such a relief. Like, it didn't even run me out of the station. I sat there just to see, because it was raining anyway. Would they run me out of there? And it took them like all day. I was there probably 9 hours or 10 hours before they ran me out. And so that would never happen in my country.
They can be quite compassionate, and certain. I think it depends which officer you run into.
Exactly. That's how it is with everybody. You know, if you can touch a core with what it is to be human with them and be vulnerable as that human. And to be honest, I learned that from the experience on the tram, because I lied to the officer who asked me what I was doing on the tram, and I said, oh, I'm a homeless man, eh? You catch me on the tram all the time without fare, eh? Just let me go like you always let us homeless people go, eh? And the one officer was convinced and walked away, and the other one started to, but then he said, where were you before you came here? And I said, Chilliwack. And I didn't know it's pronounced phonetically Chilliwack, but it's pronounced Chilliwack according to their vernacular. And so he said, hey, something's not right. You step off here, and cuff me to the rail.
Oh, wow.
So it was a great lesson to be honest with my fellow man. I found that to play the game in the game realm here, to be honest touches upon something human in us, and we can relate to.
Sure, absolutely.
And I thought about the severity of embarrassment one might suffer that led him to lie. And I realized if you shared with your embarrassment another being, they really think you're brave for doing that. And perhaps, you don't know, it might inspire them to
absolutely.
Be brave.
And this is what these videos are all about, is to change perception of what homeless people really are. And you're doing that on many levels, Daniel.
Oh, we project so severely.
Just to add to what we've been talking about, if you had 3 wishes, what would they be?
Oh, that's easy. To the annihilation of the concept of poverty as we know it. It should go away. We're more evolved beings than to believe this way anymore. Everybody is on Earth sharing this space-time construct on purpose, intentionally. Every life has intent and purpose, and this is something I didn't believe and now solidly know.
Wow.
This is the fact. So if those folks are here already, we can only cause discord within ourselves by not accepting what is already naturally intended to be so. That these folks are here with you. And if they appear in a human form, then they should be and never denied free access to their human rights. And their human rights are their needs. Their needs are their rights, which are food, shelter, clothing. We all agree that these are the things we need to survive this realm. So I would say, one-on-one, we cannot deny a person access to those things, but a culture can gang up on an individual and take away from them the right to access their human needs, which is to say the right to express themselves as a human and to have a human experience while we're here. Oftentimes in my country, they will attach a label or criteria to be met above and beyond being human,
Sure.
that you might access those. And this is to enslave you, to put a criteria. When you can see a man appears as a human, then it goes without saying, regardless of what he self-determines to do with his own life, which is his own to do, that he has the right to food, shelter, and clothing, because we all
Absolutely.
say we need. Now, and think about the culture that would be so insecure as to need to ostracize that person from the community, the extended family that we live in. It can't be a healthy mind that would need to say, I need to create a lesser man so I feel superior to that
Yeah.
man. It must be a show of an inferiority complex that
Sure.
social mind has.
Sure.
And so I propose, since we all say and write on paper that we believe this certain way, we're writing it to simply convince ourselves that this is the proper way to act. And as soon as don't need to write it anymore is when it will be. When we self-acknowledge within ourselves individually that that's a human.
Wow.
Let me help him get these things. Imagine that society also puts rain slickers on its dogs, offers tiny human habitations to wild birds, and puts walls around Fido and their automobiles, complete enclosures around them, while we leave our fellow man in the streets. And think about it, this man may be in the doorway of a dead, vacant building, and they'll say, this building was built for the sake of commerce. And although it's closed and it no longer conducts commerce, it's important that we house a fictitious concept of air within it, and leave a man. He can't even have access
Standing
to
in
that
the doorway.
building. This
Absolutely.
man has less importance than the concept of money that building was built for, although it doesn't make money anymore. So this is a very strong social concept to put in the mind of a passerby, everybody that passes by and sees a man on the streets but can't access an empty building. Is to
Sure.
say that man has no worth. Are you the next man that has no worth? Is to keep us enslaved to one another. But we're equals, and we should share the wealth of this world and not strive to create a stratification of humankind.
Your
The
words,
expressions
Daniel,
of humanity are important as
they're
they
so
are.
cutting to hear. It's such a breath of fresh air to have somebody like yourself that's very your knowledge. You're very knowledgeable. And we don't, as I said, I've been doing this for a while now, and we don't, the main lot of people that we come across are addicted to alcohol, they're alcoholics, and a lot of it is not of their own choice. And to see you and the way that you eloquently put your spirit across, it's a beautiful thing to see, my friend. So your first wish was to end all poverty. What would your second one be?
I think maybe that would be utopia, and there wouldn't be any more requirements. To understand, people want to be accepted when they come here, and we teach them very early on they're not accepted. When a parent says, "Oh, use your inside voice," or "You're not allowed to behave that way there, and you have to dress a certain way," is to say we don't accept you as you are, and you're wanting to express yourself as yourself.
Sure.
And then it goes on to schools where you must behave in a certain way, and you want to appease the teachers, and then
It's more like a
wife and your boss,
dictatorship.
and on and on. And we really need to accept the diversity that's in humanity, so that when the children come into the world, we don't begin to tell them what the world looks like to them. We should let them tell us what the
That's
world
right.
can look like, because they have a more accurate view. They live in honesty. They can see around them, and they can see that we lie when we say.
Daniel, I witnessed something earlier on. Me and Attila here, we was come around and see a regular homeless guy. His name's Terrence. He wears a orange jacket, and we were sitting on the floor with him, like how we was talking to you earlier on. And this how old was that boy? 13 years old. 13-year-old child came over with 2 packets of crisps. So he's bought 2 packets. He gave him one and kept one for himself. The 12p change that he had, he gave it to him. Now, for me, that is priceless. That's
truth.
It's that, to witness that.
There's an equality.
That's right.
And
They
compassion.
see things. That's right. They see things in a total different light. So,
And we do too, but we were taught, as Jesus said, by our earthly mothers and fathers, those who believed there was worth in the material realm and not the man. I also want to touch on a couple of things actually that you said in regards to the drug usage that we see out
yeah,
here.
sure.
And so I'll just go
Alcohol.
there. the anesthetization of this condition, the suffering that you will encounter when you're treated by your fellow human as an animal,
sure,
can become so grueling that it's easy to want to go into those some relief, and so they want to anesthetize themselves
sure,
from the pain, because it's very painful to be not accepted as a human.
Absolutely.
And so also, if you see a lot of drunks or a lot of heroin addicts or a lot of insane homeless people in your community, they're an accurate cross-section and reflection of the community in which they live. So there are many more alcoholics indoors in those communities than the representation on the streets of alcoholics and of
sure,
mentally ill and so on.
Sure.
Most people that have these, and it's very sad that we say something that only humans do is something we should condemn. The drinking of alcohol, the consumption of drugs is something that only humans do and have done since in the Cairo Museum I saw they had cocaine and marijuana with the mummies. And so when the day we become all right with the fact that humans do these things and accept that they will go into it and come out of it and some will be there all of their life, is something we have to be all right with. We have to stop needing to judge other people so that we feel superior to them within ourselves. And this is what we do and have been taught to do, because it keeps us at odds with one another. And the other thing, there was something else you said before the drugs. There was something else you said that was very important to touch on. Because it's always the society's fault that creates this. It can never be the minority of the population that is our downfall. We can't say this is why our society is all fucked up because we have homeless people, when they're just a minute amount of the population, less than 1%.
Sure.
So we have to say, why have we denied access to these folks for their human rights?
Absolutely.
And also, if one person doesn't have their human rights in your community, nobody does.
Nobody does.
Everybody is paying a penance or doing the required lot to have it look like they have, and you still don't, because you have the homeless man. Now you can go and become the homeless man and discover, see, you don't have your human rights. You'll have to go back to work to ascertain those. Meaning you'll have to get our social approval to do that. So we're always going to have to fault ourselves as a civilization. A civilization says we can do better as the many for those who can't do well for themselves. And I've seen 80-year-old women in walkers. Now, sure, Granny can stretch a tarp between two trees and live out behind the lamp store on a piece of cardboard. But as a society, we can give her a home. And so this is what we become a civilization for, to afford equal economic and social rights for one another, that we're all equal in our humanity.
Wow.
At least in our basic needs. And then if you want to get a Rolls and a mansion, then you can dabble in the structure we've created above that. But the first bubble that should be met is all of our human rights should be intact.
Well, the reason why I got into all of this was to help people like yourself, and I created a Facebook page which I generated, me and a few other people we've got 827 members that have joined. Awesome. And they donate, and this evening we've managed to give you a coat, some gloves, a toothbrush, and it was all well needed. And I'm more than sure that come Sunday when we do our thing on the 28th, please come along, Daniel, because we'd love to have you there. You're an inspiration, and we as a group, and I can tell you from them as well, we're very humbled by you, my friend, and it's been a pleasure talking to you, and it's been a pleasure to meet you this evening. I just wanted to just end this video, and then we could have a absolutely, and that's
you'll get the knowledge. So it's not mine. I plagiarized. I stole it all.
Hey, listen. Without your knowledge, you ain't going to be able to pass that on to the next generation, and that's what these videos are all about.
Have this experience if you listen to this knowledge, because you can just embrace it. It's already in there. You feel that way too.
Wow. Listen, Daniel, it's a pleasure, my friend.
It was me too.
Thank you, brother.
You bet.
Bless you.
I love you.